Shana Tova. I didn't hear you in the back. Shana Tova. All right. Thank you again to the Hatami clan so that the back can actually hear this week. Way to go. We're at T-minus almost 7 hours exactly, if you're counting like me. Or 8 hours. I can't count. Don't trust rabbis with math. We're doing okay. But I'm going to begin today with a pop quiz. Get ready. I hope you've been studying. The question is, what does the word shalom mean? Excellent. Great. Collectively, I heard you all say it. Hello, goodbye, and peace. It's like the classic Hebrew school question that it means three things, except I'm not sure it really does. I actually think it really just means peace. And the way you say hello and goodbye in Hebrew is by wishing someone peace. Except that actually doesn't work entirely either, because in English, when we wish someone peace, we wish them peace and quiet. And we're Jews. Quiet is not really in the cards. In English, we have this idea of sitting in our backyards by ourselves with like a lemonade and an umbrella in one of those zero-gravity chairs, and nature sounds beautiful. In Hebrew, there is a different understanding. It comes from the word shalem, which means whole. So when you say hello or goodbye to someone or you wish them peace, what you're wishing for someone is wholeness. It might come with a lot of noise. It probably isn't quiet. But it is deep understanding that most of us, most of the time, have a lot of brokenness inside of us. And Yom Kippur, the time when we try and throw off the physical needs, although if you're like me, you're definitely thinking about food. When we try and focus on our spirit, one of the things that becomes clear is each of the ways in which we are not whole. I don't know where she is at the moment, but if you've seen my youngest come up, she's pretty adorable. Let's be fair. But so many others at that toddler stage where they're just sort of exploring the world, we're attracted to them, we're drawn to them. And one of the reasons why is Hadar's worst problem is I would only give her 1 graham cracker instead of 2. And there is an intense joy in looking at that stage of life and imagining it for ourselves. Because as we get older, as our problems get bigger, as our losses get more serious, we recognize that the beauty of that moment gets taken away little by little with each thing that breaks us, that takes a part of our soul. And so this Yom Kippur, I want to imagine 3 ways we might face that brokenness, 3 ways we might seek the wholeness of shalom. A soft heart, challenging ourselves to feel what we feel, and moving from why to what. I'll start with that soft heart. If you have a Jewish kepi, if you have a Jewish head, then when I say soft heart, you start thinking of Passover. Because probably the most difficult theological moment for us as Jews in our Torah is as Moses approaches Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go," and it seems like after each plague, Pharaoh's ready to do it, but then God hardens Pharaoh's heart, which by any view of morality is frankly terrible. How could we allow such a thing? How could that be what our Creator of all does? Sounds like mine. Which means, of course, the rabbis have a challenge, and I'll get to that in a moment. But this year, as I was approaching, I realized something else. Every year at Passover, I like to imagine myself as Moses. Perhaps you do as well. It sounds pretty great, except I don't really live my life the way Moses does. Moses got to talk to the burning bush. God whispers in Moses' ears, hold the staff this way, say these words, and then the amazing things happen. In my day-to-day life, I have no idea what's going to happen. I do my best, but I don't get that direct message from the divine with what comes next. And what's worse, what's crazy, I started thinking about Pharaoh. Pharaoh inherits an important and magnificent tradition. Pharaoh inherits a responsibility to make sure his people have another great generation. His father tells him, you're the next link in the chain. Pharaoh's job is to be strong. People tell him he's a god. And one of the slaves comes to him and says, we want to be free. For a moment, I think I understood. And Pharaoh doesn't get God's explicit message. But of course, the rabbis point out something that if you look closely at the text, does anybody have a glass of water? Yeah, all right. Thank you. You can always tell when Larry laughs at a joke. I appreciate that. The rabbis point out something important when you read the text closely. That the first 5 plagues, Pharaoh hardens his own heart. It's only the second 5 plagues in which God hardens Pharaoh's heart. Which means that what happened was Moses shows up and says, let my people go. And Pharaoh, the one who with the responsibility, who's supposed to be strong, who's supposed to not change, wants to say no, but a part of him, a voice, some piece of him said, slavery might be wrong. And he gets 5 chances to do it himself. 5 times a little voice says, maybe I should let them go. And 5 times he chooses not to listen. And after that, it's not that God hardened his heart. It's that he can no longer hear that tiny voice of the divine. He has hardened his heart so much. So the challenge to us, when we look out at the world and we wonder, how are we going to exist? How are we going to do anything? We make our plans. We make our goals. We make our to-do lists. Can we have a soft enough heart to listen when the world tells us, actually, we need to be doing something else? We should stop and help that person on the street. We should make some time to call the loved one who is home alone. We should pause and check on our neighbor. Can we, even though the strong heart, the hard heart feels safer and more comfortable, can we push ourselves? Yeah, hi. Can we push ourselves to have a soft heart, even in the face of our brokenness? Second, there's a thing that I've noticed in Shiva. When I meet with a family observing Shiva, I try and gather them first. And I tell them, look, it's important you understand that you're not the host right now. Whatever you feel is what you're supposed to feel, because over the years, I've seen families, I've seen a mourner rushing to make sure everyone has a chair. I've seen one family member yelling at another, how come you're not crying? Aren't you sad? And another one saying, how come you're crying so much? We have to move on. Because one of the hardest things to do, especially in America, is to let ourselves feel what we feel. In our country, the way we say hello is we say, hey, how are you? I'm great. How are you? I'm great. And none of that was true. That's how we say hello, because we don't make space for ourselves to not be okay, to feel the negative feelings, sadness, anger, frustration, everything you can put in that camp. I heard this great story from a colleague. He was working with an educator that he worked with, and they were making popcorn. And the popcorn burned, which is possible. You have to watch it in the microwave. The popcorn burned, and this woman broke into tears, uncontrollable crying. And my friend, the rabbi, guessed that something else was going on and said, what's wrong? And it turned out she had just lost a parent, but she was also a mother. And so she was holding it together every day for her kids, making sure they had lunches and all the activities and she was every day not letting herself feel the sadness. And each time it built up until the popcorn is what broke her. If we don't want to be broken by the popcorn, we have to find a way to let ourselves feel those sad and difficult and negative feelings. And even more than that, we have to push ourselves to let others feel what they feel. To not tell them, oh, it's okay. Or you have to look on the bright side. To tell them, yeah, that sucks. That's hard. I'm sorry. The last one's really hard. In our Bible, we have great many statements on theology, but none perhaps are harder to read than the book of Job. It's about 42 chapters, but I'm going to give you the very, very, very abridged version. Job is this great guy. Job does everything right. Job is so good, he offers sacrifices in cases the other sacrifices weren't good enough. In fact, God thinks Job is so great, God calls the angel Satan, whose job it is. This angel's job is to roam the earth, pointing out humanity's flaws. Nobody likes that guy. God calls him forth and says, your job is to tell me how terrible humanity is, but look at Job, he's perfect, he's wonderful. And the Satan says back, yeah, he's only wonderful because he's wealthy, he has a great family, and he's healthy. And so God agrees and takes these things away from Job. His wealth is lost, his family lose their lives, and he sits on the ground covered in boils. He loses his health. And while he's sitting there, he calls out to God and says, why? He says, God, I am a good person. I don't deserve this. Why did you do this? Not only that, but he uses the language of an official court summons. He summons God to prove why Job is being punished. And in the story, the amazing thing is, God shows up. In the tempest and the tornado, God calls out to Job, who do you think you are? I'm God and you're a human. Were you there when I created the world? Afterwards, Job repents. His health is restored. He and his wife are able to start a new family, and his wealth returns. The point of the story for us in this moment is that most of the time, when we're really broken, when the really bad stuff happens, we don't get to know why. We think, if only I knew why this thing happened, that it will be better. But the twin truths of first, you don't get to know, and second, the story tells us if you did, it wouldn't actually help. If God showed up and gave you a reason, there is no reason shy of, and I'll bring your loved one back, and I'll cure your illness. That would be enough. The challenge in the face of that kind of brokenness is, can we push ourselves from why to that it happened, and to ask ourselves, what do we have in our lives? This Yom Kippur, we're about to enter the Yizkor service where we hold the memory of our loved ones close. We're going to stand up over and over again and beat our chests to ask for a better year to come. And I wish each of us to come back to shalom. That in the pursuit of wholeness, we accept our brokenness. That we have a soft heart and learn when to turn aside. That we allow ourselves and our loved ones to feel what we feel. And we remember that in our darkest moments, we don't get to know why. Shana Tova. We're going to transition to the Yizkor service now. Everyone is welcome, but there is a custom that if you have not lost an immediate loved one, that you step out for a little while.